This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with some breaking news. Donald Trump today basically confessed to violations of the Espionage Act and has lied again, this time on national TV, in an interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. This just on the heels, same day as the protective order being issued by the Magistrate Judge in the Mar-a-Lago indictment. This already paying dividends is the Department of Justice's decision to give Donald Trump a long rope about what he can and can't say about the case, hoping that he would go on Fox News, which he did the very next day. Talk about taking the bait. Donald Trump went the very next day, same day as the protective order being issued, and lied again on national television about the Bedminster meeting that he had, in which he showed national defense information, top secret and classified documents. Those were his words during the meeting at Bedminster on July 21st of 2001, not mine. And now that he knows he's been caught red-handed, he claims on network television that he was just referring in generalities to magazine articles and other things in a quote-unquote pile of papers about Iran. Well, first of all, let's stop right there. If he had, before we play the clip, if Donald Trump just confessed, which he did, to having a pile of papers about Iran, there's another word for that. That's called National Defense Information, NDI, and that is the basis of the 31 counts of the Espionage Act violations in the indictment. You're not allowed any longer, former President Trump, to have a giant pile of things about Iran, because that's called NDI, that you've unlawfully withheld. That's confession number one. The other problem he has is that this section of the indictment, and I'm gonna read it to you, paragraphs 34 and 35 primarily, or starting in paragraphs 31 through 35. These are some of the most documented, supported, corroborated by evidence allegations in the indictment overall. Out of all the counts against them, all 37, if you're going to pick a fight with justice, the Department of Justice, that is, you probably wouldn't want to do it over the one where there are tape recordings, audio recordings of you, three other people, in which it is obvious that you're pointing to a particular document that you say is highly classified, where you can hear the paper rustling in the background and you can hear shuffling of papers. And you have eyewitnesses, including the person, Margot Martin, who is the Melania Trump lookalike aide that was in the room recording this with your knowledge. Also on the side, the Deputy Director of Communications for your Save America PAC. Another person recorded what was there. Mark Meadows was present. And they're all going to testify against you. So this is the one that you pick out on network television. I mean, his lawyers, the two that are now left, of the Todd Blanche and Chris Kise, they must be slapping their forehead. I'm going to tell you, as a practicing lawyer for 32 years, there's no way that they approved of Donald Trump's language, explanations, excuses, and confessions on Fox News tonight. No way, no how. This just made their job to try to defend this guy infinitely impossible, infinitely more difficult. We may be watching somebody who is genetically incapable of having an adequate defense against him, primarily because he's guilty. And he's incapable of keeping straight the various theories. He always thinks that there's no video recording, there's no audio recording, there's no prosecutor, there's no judge, and there's no jury when he says these things. So let's play just the clip of Donald Trump in response to some relatively hard-hitting questions from Bret Baier on Fox, drilling down on the Bedminster meeting among Donald Trump, two other aides, Mark Meadows, on the 21st of July, 2001. Then we're going to compare that to the transcript of that particular meeting that's reflected in the indictment itself, and then comments where people have heard the audio will tell you it's impossible that he was just talking in generalities and not about specific documents that he was pointing the people in the room to at that moment. Let's roll the tape.
I don't want to dwell on it, but according to the indictment, you were here at Bedminster on July 21st, 2021, after you're no longer president, and you were recorded saying that you had a document detailing a plan of attack on another country that was prepared by the U.S. military for you when you were president, the Iran attack plan. You remember that?
Ready?
You were recorded.
It wasn't a document.
Okay.
I had lots of paper. I had copies of newspaper articles. I had copies of magazines.
I know. This is specifically a quote. You're quoted on the recording saying the document was secret, adding that you could have declassified it while you were president, but, quote, now I can't. You know this is still secret, highly confidential. And the indictment cites the recording and the testimony from people in the room saying you showed it to people there that day. So you say on this, on tape,
it says just the opposite.
That you can't declassify. So why have it?
When I said that I couldn't declassify it now, that's because I wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify.
And that's what you said. You didn't declassify it.
I said no. I said I couldn't.
But
that wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
I'm just saying what the indictment says.
Well,
the recording and the people in the room who testified.
These people are very dishonest people. They're thugs. They're thugs. If you look at what they've done to other people, what they've done to, and overturned in the U.S. Supreme Court. These are thugs.
The suggestion was that you wanted this as evidence that the military, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, had preemptively sent you plans for a possible attack on Iran and that you didn't order that to happen. That's the suggestion.
I never ordered it to happen, no.
But that's why you wanted the document.
I don't think I've ever seen a document from Milley. Milley, frankly, was incompetent. The last one I'd want to attack with as my leader would be Milley. That I can tell you.
All right, last thing on this.
Okay. Now, if you just dropped in from outer space and you heard Donald Trump make that statement and you had no other evidence to corroborate what I'm about to tell you, you'd think, well, that sounds pretty reasonable. He was just talking in generalities about magazine clippings and other things that aren't part of an indictment or aren't illegal or a criminal act. Wrong. Let's go to the actual indictment, which I'll read from, but we'll put up on the board so you can read along. So if you go to the indictment itself, it says, at the start of the meeting, upon greeting the writer, publisher, and his two staff members, Trump said this about documents that he had just found. Listen to the vernacular. I found this plan of attack. Read it. It's interesting. Okay. He's not talking in generalities. This refers to an object that's in the room that he wants others to read. Later in the interview, Trump engaged in the following exchange. Well, and then he met Milley. With Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack country A. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. In other words, look at the document that I'm showing you. You don't use the word look if you're not directing somebody to look at something. From your big pile of papers, which whenever you hear that, in my hot take, read NDI, National Defense Information, he's not supposed to have in his criminal count in his indictment. They presented me this, another article that indicates in grammar that you're showing someone something. This, that, let me show you this. This is off the record, but they presented me this, again, indicating he's showing them something. This was him, meaning Milley. This was the Defense Department and him. To which one of the people, the writer, the person who's going to write the memoir for Meadows in the room says, wow. I don't think he's saying wow because Donald Trump is talking in generalities from his big pile of NDI. I think, and everybody thinks, that when they can hear the rustling just like this and paper shuffling on the recording, that the guy is saying, or the woman's saying, wow, because they've just been shown something. And how do we know what that something was? Trump goes on. We looked at some. This was him. This meaning the document that he's showing. This wasn't done by me. This was him. How many times do we have to say this, that, and look before an average, reasonable jury concludes that he's showing an actual document, despite the lie that he just gave on network television the day of the protective order being issued, in which he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have that document. That document doesn't exist. I was just talking about things in generalities from my big pile of secret stash of classified Iranian documents. You know, the one that everybody has. Don't we all have a secret stash of Iranian documents just piled up in our house because we're just hoarders of classified top secret information? No, we're not. And that's why we're not all indicted for the Espionage Act and other things, Mr. Former President. He goes on using this and that and look. This was him, meaning Milley. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. Pages long. Look. Who uses the phrase pages long look if you're not actually showing a document that's pages long and you want somebody to look at it? I mean, this is again insulting to the intelligence of the American people. Certainly to the MAGA Republican cultists that follow him. I mean, he must take them for utter and complete morons. Really, just low-grade IQ followers of his who don't understand the basic fourth-grade literacy, English language, third-grade literacy, second-grade literacy, okay? We're not talking New York Times level 8th grade literacy. This is at a reading level of a third grader. Okay, look, this, long, pages, him. Let's go on. He continues, Donald Trump, on the recordings. Wait a minute, let's see here. Then there's laughter. Right, because he's being shown or she's being shown documents. I just found. Isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, you know? That's not just an indiscriminate pile of documents, Donald Trump. That's something you just found, and that in your perverse show and tell to undermine American security, you're showing other people in a room. And then he says, not my words, his, except it's like highly confidential. Right? It's so much like highly confidential, Trump, that it was and is highly confidential. And you should return it pursuant to a subpoena that the Department of Justice has issued to you and your lawyers. Trump goes on to hang himself. Secret. This is secret information. Look at this. You look at this. And he starts reading from it. You attack. He's quoting from a document that is in his hands. There's no other conclusion that could be made. I don't care what the crazy man, with a red tie on Fox News said tonight. This is the transcript in real time of the audio recording. And people are going to testify that were in the room, or they're going to be prosecuted themselves. Attention, Margot Martin. Meadows is already cooperating with the government. And then he goes on, Donald Trump. I was just thinking because we were talking about it, and he said, and then there's a quote. It's obviously a quote. He wanted to attack country A and that. This was done by the military and given to me. Again, second grade, third grade reading level. This, something he's showing, was done by the military and given to me, right? The second grade teacher was in a classroom teaching reading and said to the class, Johnny said this was done by the military and given to me. What is Johnny referring to? They would say a piece of paper that was in the room. And the jury will figure that out pretty quickly as well. Then he goes on and says, this was done by the military and given to me. I think we can probably use it, right? And the staffer says, I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, well, have to try to. Trump jumps in like in some sort of crazy game, a game show where he jumps in with the answer like Jeopardy. It says, declassify it. Right, declassify it because it's classified. And the staffer says, figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out. See, as president, I could have declassified it. It, meaning an object in the room, not one figment of his imagination that he's talking about. Right? This wasn't a game of charades. that they were all participating in, where Trump is like acting out something and people are trying to guess. Top secret and classified documents about Iran. Is that what you're talking? Is that it? Yes, you got it. I didn't even have to show it to you. You got it. Does anybody really believe that? And then Trump goes on, now I can't, but this is still a secret. Not that, not the pile, not this, that, you, look, object, document, in room. And worse for Donald Trump, not to belabor the point, is that people have actually heard the recording and they hear you rustling papers and shuffling papers because you are showing them something. So I think you have one of two choices, Donald Trump. You either stop going on television to continue to lie to the American people and hand gifts on a daily basis to the prosecution. And by the way, I don't want you to stop doing that. But if I were your lawyer, I would say either stop doing that. Or if you're going to go on, then be properly prepared to tell the truth. Tell the truth and don't use a line from that old country song, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? Because it's obvious from these papers, from the transcript, that you stole documents, that you took them to Bedminster that once were at Mar-a-Lago, and you were showing them off in some perverse, treasonous compromise of national security show and tell performance and showing off to your friends. And for that, and your confession to Brett Baer today, that you have retained a pile of documents regarding Iran, you've just admitted to at least 3 counts in your indictment. And now you're seeing the beauty and magic that is Jack Smith, special prosecutor, special counsel, and his team, who have not made one false step in the last 7 months that they've been on the case. Not one, including not asking to have Donald Trump gagged. He can't talk about, some people might be questioning, how does he get to talk about that recording? Because it's in the indictment and he hasn't gotten it yet. Under the protective order, whatever the government gives him as Brady material, he can't disclose it. But it's already been disclosed by the government because the transcript, or at least a partial transcript, has been reproduced in the indictment itself. So the guy's allowed to comment on it. But the beauty of Jack Smith and the trap that was laid, right? Like the little rat, the big rat that Donald Trump is, a little piece of cheese that was sitting in the trap and got snapped today on his neck at the Brett Baer interview, is that they all calculated in the prosecutor's office, the DOJ's office, that Trump would F up again. Let him talk. The more he talks, the more clips. He might as well just type Exhibit A at the bottom because we're going to use it against him at the trial. And that's what we saw today on Fox News, who invited Donald Trump apparently to come on for a public hanging. And that's what we observed. I'm going to give you my analysis as a practicing trial lawyer, as a podcast host, at the intersection of law and politics every day on hot takes just like this one, only on the MeidasTouch network. And then every Wednesday and Saturday, we put together, curate those best stories that sit in those politically charged litigation matters and bring them to you in a podcast I co-founded and co-anchored called Legal AF. It's also only on the MeidasTouch network. You can get it by subscribing to MeidasTouch on their YouTube channel. You can get the audio podcast everywhere, every platform you get podcasts from. And then if you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up here. Helps with the algorithm, helps with the quantity and quality of what I bring to you each day. And you can follow me, Michael Popok, on all things social media at MS Popok. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.